Well, good afternoon, everybody. Mark Westcott here, and welcome to our Rural Succession Made Simple webinar today. I know we've got over a dozen people who have registered and are on already. Hi, Robin, and so on. So Rhonda, and I know Robin's there, even though you just across the road there, Robin. I know you're here watching the show. Welcome everyone today, and thanks for joining. So today I just wanted to say a few issues just for an hour in regard to trying to make rural succession planning simple. So that's what the topic is today, and the format is please ask questions as we're going along. Both Sue Ellen and Tori are in the background there, and they'll throw up any questions that are relevant at the right time. So and I'll try and get to those as we see. But I just want to welcome everyone today. Great to have you all here. These days, unfortunately, we have to start with disclaimers. So I'll start with that. We're not providing any taxation, legal, financial planning advice or any other advice today. General nature only conversations. And if you need specific advice, please don't hesitate to speak to other professional advisors or one-on-one conversations. So I wanted to get that out of the way, but I just wanted to start with a question that I often ask at the start of having conversations with people, and that is, out of everyone that's watching, how many of you know a family where the family has turned to dust? It's just turned upside down, turned to custard, whatever you want to call it, when a key person has passed away, when mum or dad have passed away. How many people have seen situations where families have started arguing? They've, there's been squabbles within the family. Sons, daughters-in-law get involved, and all of a sudden the kids aren't talking to each other, and so on. So, how many of you, if you just write something in those comments, thanks. I'd be really interested to just see how many of you have witnessed such a thing, or how many of you have been in a situation where you've watched families go through that. Tori, any comments coming through yet? So yep, lots of families. Jenny, yep, absolutely right. Yep, Joe, and this is a very common thing. Rhonda, yep, hi Rhonda, and it just breaks my heart, because what we end up doing is we spent a lot of time last year with clients, with customers, where members of their family had passed away, and obviously we were sort of coming along afterwards, picking up the pieces to try and turn everything the right way up again, but also more importantly to make sure that it didn't happen for the next generation, because that's tends to be what happens is, bad things happen occasionally in families, and then all of a sudden we get an influx of all the family members wanting us to help them to make sure the same thing doesn't happen in their family. For those of you that, that don't know me, my name's Mark Westcott. I was bred up near Hughenden, where Robin's from, and a number of years ago. But for the last 35 years, I've been helping families with all this sort of stuff in regard to succession planning, estate planning, and making sure, I guess, at the end of the day, that my ultimate aim is to help ensure that when someone passes, the kids still get together at Christmas time as mates. I don't want to waste a whole lot of time going through testimonials and so on, but if you don't know me very well, there's a website, markwestcott.com. Please go on, have a look at that after the seminar, and there's a number of people on there saying nice things, talking about our process and so on. But my ultimate aim for you, as always, is for you to be a hero for your family. And that's my goal for this year. I actually read a couple of books during the break at Christmas time, and it was all about, how to be a hero for the people in your life, and how I can best do that for the people that are watching this show, is to allow you tools and capabilities to be a hero for your family. I want you to have the opportunity to make sure that everything that you've put in place, when the time comes and you are gone, is that your family can look back and say, well, I'm really glad mum or dad or both of them took the time and the effort to make sure that all this was taken care of. And unlike all the other families we've witnessed, we're now in a great position. We're all still getting together. Everyone's still mates, and the grandkids are all still friends, the cousins, nephews, nieces, and so on. So that's kind of my ultimate aim. Anyway, time for question number 2 is, how much work have you done on your estate plan at this point in time? Have you done a little bit? Not much at all? Have you done a lot? Have you done a fair amount? Have you got a news agency will from Barker's News Agency in Longreach, or have you spent a bit more time and effort on getting a will done to make sure that you've got a good plan in place? Joe, yes, minimal. I know there's some people on that have done a bit of work, and I just want you to think about, and if you can just write in the notes there, how much have you done on your plan already? Because by the end of today, what I want to show you is whatever you have done, we want to give you some ways where you can get all this sorted in the blink of an eye. And ultimately, where we're heading to with these, to try and help you we've decided this year to put on a 2-day retreat. And that's going to be one of the options we'll talk about as we get further through here. So we've got plenty of options for getting this done for you in 90 days. And thanks, Rhonda. And but certainly we're putting on a 2-day retreat, and we'd really welcome you to think about coming along to that, because that way you're going to get it done in the blink of an eye and in a flash, so to speak. But in general terms, what I want to cover in this webinar is the 3 big issues that families face. And this is just consistent through all the families we deal with. So we'll talk about what they are. 3 ways to help families to get unstuck, because traditionally procrastination is just one of the big, I guess, stalling points, or the biggest reasons families do get stuck is procrastination. And once again, please feel free to make comments as we go along, but you all know plenty of people who spend so much time procrastinating about this. One of the reasons people procrastinate is because, and I'm not being sort of sexist or anything here, but I mean dads generally, and certainly a number of mums these days, are good at doing everything on the farm. They can fix the polypipe when it's broken. They can they can do everything to everything that's needed on the farm. If the power goes out, if the engine stops, if the bore stops pumping water, there always seems to be a way that they know how to fix everything. And my take is that the reason people procrastinate, especially the dads, and keep putting this off, is that they don't know where to start, who to talk to, or how to get it done. And so what they do is they do nothing, and that's the greatest tragedy of all this. So what I want to show you today is just some simple ways to get you unstuck if that's kind of where you are. I want to talk about how we've saved actually more than one family from disaster, just some simple things we do where if we hadn't turned up, it would have been an absolute mess had we not turned up. And at the end of this, I just want to go through and share a couple of bonuses with you, give you the opportunity to make a very small donation to Angel Flight as well. But there'll be some great gifts as part of the end of this today. I just want to check, does everyone have their workbook? Rural Succession Made Simple workbook. It would have been in one of the emails we sent you. Sorry, there's some notes on one stage. There's some forms, what we call the DOS conversation, on one of the other pages and so on. I just want to check that everyone has that, because I'd welcome you to certainly to take some notes as we go through today. Thanks for putting that up. If anyone knows how to copy that quickly before it goes down, they've done well. So thank you, though. But we've certainly sent that in the emails that have come to you. I hope you've had that. And yeah, it's in the email, and if you can just print that out. But what I'd like to go through, and just to start off with, is the three big issues that families face and why they tend to get stuck. And anyone here would like to comment on which of these was the most outstanding for them? Communication, conflict in families, and confusion. And confusion's the one where we say, not knowing where to start, what to do, who to talk with, and so on. Who to trust too is a very important part of the third one there, confusion. And but by far the biggest issue we tend to have is the communication issue. Confusion, yep, absolutely, Joe. Communication is the one that tends to raise its head the most, and that is that there's a generational communication gap between, in some cases, grandparents, parents, and the grandkids. And we have, I could tell you 15 stories, 20 stories of cases where the grandkids have basically rung me. In fact, a lot of the Young Beef Producer Forum sessions I've been to, I have, some of the next generation kids coming along at the Roma Young Beef Producers, for example, and they come up to me and they say, we don't know what our future looks like, because here we are, we're keen, we're fired up, we're ready to go, we want to be on the land. Mum and Dad would love to see that too, but Grandma and Granddad still haven't. They still refuse to talk about succession planning. They still refuse to talk about estate planning, and so we really have no idea of where we're going with this. And can you come and have a talk to Mum and Dad? And of course, I explain, well, it's fine having a chat with Mum and Dad, but until the grandparents decide what they're going to do, Mum and Dad probably don't have much choice either. And it seems to be a generational thing in a lot of way. A lot of grandparents aren't open to having the conversation to the next generation. And I've talked before about sometimes people see conversations about money as vulgar. In the old days, that was it's not a word or a phrase that's probably used much anymore, but talking about wealth and transition of wealth was something that was thought of as vulgar back then. And everybody just sit back and wait, we'll do the right thing. Well, these days there's a lot more communication, and there's a lot more speed required and wanted in communication between the generations. And so it's important that we try and help the generations open up communication. And those of you that have ever seen any of the videos I've done, there was one I've done, we've used a number of Facebook ads, and you might have seen it online. And I talk about tea and scones. And it really was, I'm going to tell the story because it was just an incredible story. It actually started at the Young Beef Producers. These kids came up and said, can you help Mum and Dad? They, we want to come back on the farm, but they don't have any certainty. They could be kicked off out of the house any day. So I went out, flew out to the property, landed, and of course, the grandparents lived about 150 metres away from Mum and Dad's house, where Mum and Dad and the kids were. And obviously they knew I'd turned up, and so the wife, the daughter-in-law, went up and said, "Look, would you like to come down and have a cup of tea? We've got Mark Westcott here, but just thought you might like to come and meet him." And the great thing about that was it was very hard for the grandparents to say no, because that would have been very rude not to come down and greet someone who'd flown out to the property. So anyway, look, they came down. We sat down to tea and scones, and the daughter-in-law put out some beautiful scones and jam and cream, and still salivate at the thought of it. It was such a lovely morning, and all of a sudden, just breaking bread together effectively, the grandparents sort of looked at me and said, Mark, what is it you do? And I just explained, I help with intergenerational transfer, succession planning, and I said, you've got 3 grandkids here that are keen to come back on the land, but everyone's confused because there's no seems to be no plan in place, and nobody seems to have had any conversation about it in the past. And all of a sudden, the grandparents, Granddad said, and I mean, Granddad was very old at this stage. He was very close to the end, and but he saw what we were talking about, and he said, no, there's no confusion at all. We've just never got around to talking about it. I want the property to go to, the son and the daughter-in-law who are sitting there with me, because we want every opportunity for our grandkids. We love them very much. And I've got to say, I just started writing some notes down and extending the conversation. And by the time the daughter-in-law brought out the chocolate cake, as I tell in the story, we were just sitting around laughing, chatting. Everything was sorted. All we had to do was get the solicitors involved. And I've never sorted something so quickly in my whole life. Within 15 minutes, it was all taken care of. And my point why I tell that story, and I sorted over tea and scones, that's right. And the reason I tell that story is because sometimes that's all it takes is an outsider to come in to start the conversation. And it's always, these always seem to be conversations that you can't fix within the family yourselves. And there's reasons. There might have been a bit of agitation between the grandparents and the son, or some agitation with the daughter-in-law. Who knows? But an outsider coming in, what I always find is that everyone turns up with manners when I turn up, which is a lovely thing, because no one wants to be seen as being bad-mannered or rude or anything like that. And they'll talk, and the conversation opens up. And sometimes just me being there is the greatest conduit to starting the communication between the generations and allowing it then to keep going and giving people opportunities. And certainly our program and our process is very much about having conversations. And then with the children or the, in this case, the parents, and then down to the sons and so on as well. So that kind of covers communication and conflict. But there's one thing I will say, and that is people often ask me, when is the best time to start the conversation in the family? Is when the kids are all at school? Are they too young when the kids are at uni? And I wrote a book once, Don't Be Like Harry, and before all this latest stuff blew up. But certainly after his new bride had dismantled him from the family and taken him away from all his family and broken up all the relationships and so on. I just thought it was a perfect example of how if you don't do this early, once your kids start getting, they're married and they're starting their own families, it just gets harder and harder and harder. And the best time is when the kids are still young. That way, the next generation knows that you're serious about succession planning, you're serious about estate planning, you're taking it seriously, and you're involving them even at an early age in the conversation. So they know they're involved in the conversation. They're part of the early planning, even if they're too young to probably understand it all or some of the intricacies of it. But if you've done it when they're all young and you've got it in place, then when they go out and they're starting to have relationships, they're getting married and so on, and you've already set up the asset protection, you've already got everyone sorted, well, you've got it all done. And when the people come into the family, the sons, the daughters-in-law come into the family, that's the way it is, and that's what they're coming into, and they have to accept it. And obviously, I mean, we still have conversations about it, but you're not trying to change anything once relationships have already come along. So to me, the earlier you start these conversations, the better. And I think people, and I know I've got some people we're working with that are watching this today, we're working with already, and I bet if we'd started this 10 years ago, it might have made life simpler right now. So just as a general comment. So, and the third one, I think a couple of people put down that confusion was the thing for them. Not knowing where to start, what to do, who to talk with, who to trust, who to avoid, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, or how complicated it's going to be. They're the things that I find cause the greatest procrastination and confusion and complication for people. And what we've tried to, I remember 5, 6, 7 years ago talking to my brother out on the family property out near Hughenden, northwest Queensland. I remember talking to him, and he said, some people in the area had just spent $70,000, $80,000 on getting their estate planning and their succession planning in place, and it just dropped me through the floor to think that it would cost that much money. And I mean, it's not an inexpensive thing, but But certainly what I vowed to do was to make sure that, and they said it, he told me that this family had been doing it for 3 years. They'd been having family meetings for 3 years, sitting around tables and getting nowhere fast, spending a lot of money. And so what I vowed to do was to make estate and succession planning for rural families quick as a flash, relatively inexpensive, and certainly to take all the confusion out of it by allowing you as much as possible to delegate it to us, and so to us and the solicitors and so on. And so the time that you need to be involved is minimised, and that's what I've tried to do as part of the work that I do with clients. Make it relatively inexpensive as much as we can, to make it quick and to get through it as simply as possible. So I'd like to, if you can get your workbooks out onto this page, the page that says the DOS conversation. Hopefully your first page is full of notes already. But I'd just like to start with a question, and that is, I'd like to edit, if I may, the question that's up on the screen and the one that's on your workbook. And just ask you, if we were meeting 90 days from today, what has to have happened for you to feel happy with your progress, both personally and professionally, around your estate and succession planning? So if you can just put in the top box there, change that 3 years to 90 days. If we're meeting here 90 days from now, what would you like to have achieved in regard to your estate and succession planning? And I'm just going to give everyone a couple of minutes here and stop talking. And maybe you'd like to put some comments in the comment area, please, just in regard to what would be important for you to achieve in the next 90 days. So either put them in the comments section and then maybe write it down in this workbook afterwards. But I'd really like to see what your feedback is here for all those that are online now. And I know Tori will put those up as soon as they start coming through. Yep, what you'd like to achieve 90 days from now in regard to where you are now. So no matter where you are, if you've done a little bit in regard to your estate and succession planning, if you've done a lot, if you think you've got it sorted and you're just here to see if there's any ideas you hadn't thought of before, put that down, because it just helps us to be better at what we do if we better understand where everyone would like to be moving forward. Okay, everyone's being shy and bashful, Tori, are they, or they're writing it down on their workbook, not on the notes section? Thanks, Rhonda, for everyone to be getting along, and that's I think, as I've said before, one of my ultimate aims is that the kids all get together at Christmas as mates, and they're all the grandkids get together and yep, new executors for your will. Yeah, there's some ideas we might have there to help you, Joe, in regard to who you need to have. And certainly if you're thinking about one of the kids being executor, sometimes, you need to think about, you either have all kids or no kids, sometimes, depending on ages and so on, because if you leave one kid as executor, that in itself can cause some problems. So certainly, especially if that's the child that's getting the farm and the others aren't, and you've left them as executors. So just have some thoughts in regard to that. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, and that is how to have clear and concise plan. I'm assuming, Lainey, that means a documented, funded, and legally binding plan. That's great. Hope you can get some ideas out of this that will help you. Okay, the next part of this page, if you're just going down the left-hand side there, dangers, opportunities, and strengths. So really what I like to focus on here is to say, okay, what are the dangers that your family are facing at the moment? Okay, so what are the things that at the moment your family are going, well, okay, so in this way, maybe you could just put down what the truth is in regard to your own situation, if you're happy to. Are they communication issues? Are they conflict? Are they unknowns? Are they procrastination? Are they not knowing where to start? Are they evolving plans? So that's great. There's a reason we call our business a strategic evolution. is because we want to help people strategically evolve each year, because each year is going to be different to the last. And whilst our business, we call it Rural Succession Solution, our company's called Strategic Evolution. And I think it's important that one of the ways that I help people become heroes for their family is to allow you to evolve each year, because nothing's surer than your estate and succession plans will evolve over time. And, you'll buy a new property. One of the kids will get married. Someone will get divorced. Somebody will, you'll have children, grandchildren born or whatever. The value of the business goes through the roof like it has over the last couple of years. So what are the things that are the biggest issues for you, if you'd like to write them down? Opportunities. Well, hopefully we're going to give you 3 opportunities to make progress in regard to what you've got here. And yes, in fact, I'll just touch on that, Joe, if I may. Gauging the strengths and weakness of each adult child, we strike fairly regularly situations where the fact that, like, who would have thought that dads and sons sometimes squabble in families, and I call it the young bull, old bull scenario, where dad's the old bull, the young bull's coming through, and just like in nature, the young guy knows, he's been away, learned all this stuff, and wishes dad would do it differently. And of course, dad says, well, I've done it this way for 100 years. Why would I change? So you're always going to get that kind of conflict. But we also go a bit deeper, and we do what we call profiling, and help people to look at doing a little questionnaire to find out your best communication skills and or the way you communicate best. And if we can get the parents and the kids to do that, then I can come in and have conversations with the family and say, look, this is how so-and-so is best communicated with, and approaching them this way is not going to work. Approaching them this way will be a better thing. And everyone sort of understands how the other person's best communicated with. Sue, hey Sue, how are you going? Long time. One challenger within the family is a danger and feels most threatened in the process. Absolutely. Good to see you here, sir. Yeah, and that can be an issue as well. And, you can have conversations. Sometimes in families, whatever you say, there's deep-rooted issues because it might have been left too late or whatever, or there's personality conflicts or emotional, mental resilience issues, mental health issues, and so on. And they're the things that we've got to try and identify and move forward. Certainly harmony within family members, but also I was just looking at helping you write down on the left-hand side there, what are the strengths that you currently have? So it's all very well to say, oh, woe is me, these are the things that are going wrong. We've got conflict, we've got communication issues, we've got all these dangers. That's all very well. But I want to ask you, what are the strengths that you have? Now, the strengths that you have is, firstly, the fact that you've got something to be planning around. You've got a successful farm, rural business, whatever. So you've got a good asset base. What are you already have good relationships with your accountant, maybe a financial planner, and so on. You're turning up to things like this. You're having the opportunity to talk to people like us in regard to how to best get this started, how to best get this done. You're confident in reputation of the people that you're dealing with, and you have confidence from us in regard to the clients we've worked with in the past that say nice things about us. So, and so what I've done on this form, and what I'm encouraged, it's really hard when this works backwards, but on this form is to just write down what are your main dangers at the moment, what are the opportunities for you, what are the strengths that you possess, and what action can you take to eliminate dangers, to focus on and chase after the opportunities you've identified, and to maximize the use of the strengths that you have, be that relationships, your asset base, and so on. So I just hope going through that little exercise there is useful for you. But I just want to show you one of the other tools that we use in helping clients, and that is what we call our succession plan filter. And if you'd like a copy of this and a blank version of this so you can fill this out yourself, please just let Sue Ellen know. And I'm just going to put this on a big slide, if I may, for a second, because I realised I didn't grab a glass of water. I'll just be 1 second. Okay. Back again. And so I just wanted to just go through this. So what we do here, and I'll just put it on the big screen again, so you can read it depending on whether you're on an iPad or an iPhone or a computer watching this. The succession plan filter is very much about saying, okay, if we're meeting here 90 days, back to the same question again, if we're meeting here 90 days from today, looking back, what has to have been the transformation from where you are today to where you'd like to be regarding the key outcomes for your estate and your succession plan? So then we go, okay, well, what's the purpose? So we turn that into a project and we say the purpose, what is it? And so what I've put there is creating pride in establishing a fair. Sorry, Helen, it's not clear, but what Sue Ellen or Tori can do is email you out a copy of this after the session today, a copy of this and a blank version of this, so you can do your own. But the project purpose, if you basically let me read through it, is second line there. It's all about creating pride and establishing a fair and effective estate and succession plan, so that by the time you've finished in 90 days from now, you're really proud of the fact you've put something that's fair, it's effective, and you've covered off both the estate plan and the succession plan. We then talk about what's the best results. So we say, okay, the best result would be to have an up-to-date, documented and funded plan. You've created fairness, you've created certainty for everyone. I know you won't be able to see everyone here. So Helen, yes, we'll send that to you. There's an email address if you want Sue Ellen to send that to you. Communication is open between everyone, harmony, and everyone understands the plans. You've protected assets against specifically failed marriages, bankruptcy, and being sued for spray drift or whatever else, death, early death, excess, taxation, and so on. And you've created peace of mind for all your loved ones. Now, to me, that's a great result, and that's what I would hope everyone would aspire to in regard to what they'd like to achieve if they just had 90 days and they needed to get this done very quickly and they paid attention to this. I'm just going to touch on here asset protection, failed marriages, and so on. And I'm really just going to put it out there and say, look, whichever way you cut this, it's getting close to 50% of marriages end in divorce and the generation coming through. And if you don't protect your assets, if you just hand them down with good asset protection as part of your estate planning, and you just give these assets to your children, for half of your kids, you're at risk that half of the money you give them is going to go out to your daughter-in-law's next husband or your son-in-law's next wife. And so asset protection is a very big part of this whole process that we're going through. I also talk about worst result and just say, look, if you don't do something, some of the examples we used, you're still holding on to an out-of-date or non-existing will. And look, in all the years I've been doing this, very, very, very rare. I think 1% of people we've probably dealt with over that period of time have an up-to-date, appropriate and current will. Most people get a will done, they get excited about that, they put it in the top drawer and never touch it again. And so what we're trying to help people do is by having our succession club, I'll talk about later, is very much about having a subscription plan so that this is taken care of every year. Every year we have a meeting, we make sure everything's up to date and we keep you current and so on. The worst result is also not knowing where to start or how to move forward. You're still procrastinating. You haven't had any conversations. You're not communicating. You haven't created a plan which allows fairness. And for most people, they're old wills that they did probably before the kids were even born, just say divide everything by equally between the three kids. Now, if you've had a child that's been on the farm for 20 years and you've had 2 others backpacking through Europe, that's not a good outcome. You 2 pass away, mum and dad pass away, the farm has to be sold. The guy that's been on the farm for 20 years is sitting there shaking his head saying, what the hell happened? And the 2 that backpack around Europe come back, pick up a few million and say thanks very much, and off they go again. And their life is complete at the expense of whoever was on the farm. Other worst results are basically setting up for family fights, squabbles. I have a concept called the exponential grief curve. And quite simply, what I say is that the longer you leave this before you start, the worse the scale is up the curve, and it goes exponentially, not in a straight line. Every year it grows by a hell of a lot more. And that's because what happens is when the kids start getting married and having children and so on, it's not the kids that are usually squabbling. It's sooner or later sons and daughters-in-law will start asking, the child of you guys will be saying, what's our certainty? Now, if you haven't had these conversations with the kids, your kids are sitting there copping grief from their wives or husbands who are sitting there saying, look, you've been here for 20 years, you've been here for 10 years, we've been working our backside off for all this period of time, and your dad won't even talk about what the plan is, or your mum won't talk about what the plan is. What sort of certainty can we have? Now, sadly, we can cover that, Laney, so stick with it, and but that's certainly something you can do, stop people contesting the will. So I can't give you that advice, but we've got lawyers that can. And basically what happens is, and sadly, a couple of years ago, we ended up coming in too late for a couple of families. And in both cases, and it was funny, though, we met both these families. Cyril, and you'll remember this. We met one family in the morning and we flew somewhere else in the afternoon, and we met the other family, and both these families had, and these were daughter-in-laws. It's not that they're always the problem by any means, but in these 2 cases, the daughter-in-laws had just got to the end of the rope in regard to waiting for everything to be transferred to their husbands, and they just blew the whole family up by having a high level of expectation, and we managed to resurrect a few things, but certainly that had got to the point where the exponential grief curve had just tipped off into the stratosphere, and sometimes you just can't help when that happens. Well, you can help. You start earlier, and you have all the conversations earlier. So look, that's a tool I highly commend to you, the succession plan filter. You've got Sue Ellen's contact details have flashed up on the screen a few times. If you'd like to just email her or just put a note in the comments, and she'll send those out to you. She'll have your email address, and you can just go through. And what happens is we go down the right-hand side then, and that creates an understanding by us. Once you've done this, it creates an understanding of what does success look like for you. So you tick basically all those things I've written in there. Asset protection, and I'll try and make this bigger. I hope you can read these. Asset protection is fairness of outcome rather than equality. Is that important? Certainty for the next generation. Completed quickly, cost effectively, simply. Having a facilitator guide you through the maze, because there's a million things you won't know you don't know. Family relationships. We have speed dial with counsellors to help. Sometimes where emotional resilience and some issues come up, we have people who are professional at doing this sort of stuff. Minimising conflict. Sometimes family have children with special needs, or there's special needs regardless, and we make sure they're taken care of. Plus all the human elements. We want to make sure that you leave nothing left unsaid. Okay, so we have what we call our legacy letters, and those that have worked with us for a while, you'll know some of the other people we work with that, excuse me, will help you make sure you craft the things to say to those when you're not here. And look, that comes down to where do you want to be buried, cremated, whatever, what sort of music. So all the things that you'll just say, well, that's simple, Mark, why would you bother with that? They're the things that are important. And I think you need to take care of that, because not doing that, not filling out your final wishes forms and so on that we have, what that does, it leads to then arguments between your kids when you're no longer here, sadly, because you want to make sure that when you go, you don't leave anything for your kids to have a conversation that they can argue about. And if you don't fill out where you want to be buried or cremated, or if you don't tell them which one, some will want to cremate you and some will want to bury you, and that in itself will create an issue. So they're the sorts of human elements that we treat very seriously in our process to make sure that they're all taken care of. Now, I'm just going to cover these next couple of slides very quickly because I've already given you a website, markwestcott.com. But look, for those of you that are wondering, who is Mark? What does he do? We have just put in a couple of quotes here from people that we've worked a lot with over the years. My family have comfort in knowing it's all going to get taken care of. People from Emerald, to know Mark will turn up with the family when they need it most. These tools will save my family's lives. I'm just going to say here what he's referring to is the thing we call the guardian advantage. When one of our clients pass away, we basically drop everything and turn up and for the family with all your documents and help guide your children through to alleviate and minimise any chance of conflict. So I'll turn up and spend a day with them or more, whatever they need to make sure they're clear on what needs to be done. And then Kelsey from Boulia, working with us, highly recommended us. He's one of us. He's from the land. Yep, I grew up out there and understands. So there's just some people have said some nice things. Now, I promised as a lead up to this that I'd tell a story about some families we've saved. We've actually got a few here, but I just start with the first one here. And this was another case of a cuppa and a chat, or tea and scones, whatever you'd like to call it. That's kind of why we call the first step in our process a cuppa and a chat, because it's very much about sitting down with families and having that initial conversation. I always like to try and meet people face to face for the first meetings and sit there and ideally out on your property, your farm, your business, whatever it is, so I can get a feel for who you are, where you live, your family, and all that sort of stuff. So the first example was being able to see the primary strategy needed over, as I say here, over a simple cuppa and a chat. I say is well recognised, and at parks, I remember in New South Wales, the middle generation not being able to have a conversation with the first generation. And it's not just parks, it's not just the tea and scones I told you about. I've been out to Broken Hill and a whole lot of places where, in fact, at one of the places I went to, the grandparents wouldn't come out, so that made it a little more difficult. But the middle generation weren't able to have a conversation with the first. And same story again, I invited them all to sit down over tea and scones, and it's exactly the same story as I told you before. It was the first time they'd talked about succession planning in about 10 years. And once again, within 15 minutes, we'd created consensus. Another one, the cattle family from around Boulia quickly saw our value when we documented the burning issues checklist during our first issue and first meeting. And what I do is with the first meeting, we sit down and we say, okay, these are all the things that are important. These are the burning issues. It's a bit like that succession filter I went through. We need to identify what are the greatest issues and opportunities for you. So writing that down in black and white, all the key issues they had, was just game-changing for them. But more importantly, and the biggest issue for them was knowing that they could delegate all this to us. They're not lawyers, they're not accountants or facilitators. You could see it was like a weight of 100 tons was lifted off their shoulders because it allowed them to delegate to us. They realised that we knew all the things they didn't know. I always say to people, you don't know what you don't know. We were asking them questions, they just shook their head and just went, shit, I hadn't thought about that. And which gave them real confidence and comfort to get their plans sorted. And finally, just the third one was we did a family consensus meeting, 7 kids from Quilpie, and it literally saved the family. There were seven kids. And I always sit down with children one-on-one, not in the first stages. I don't do family meetings around the table. We sat down one-on-one. But they were at a stage where they were close to imploding, and there was a family dust-up was brewing. It was just about fisticuffs, and they just needed someone from outside to listen to their individual issues. And as I say, no group talk was ever going to help. They needed me to understand and have empathy from where they were coming from, and that could be private and confidential. And so then once I understood whatever, and there's a lot of kids there, so 7 kids listening to all their points of view and empathetically, once I had all their points of view, then I could go back to mum and dad and not say Fred said this and Frida said this, but I could go back to the parents and basically say, look, this is what I think you need. This is what I believe you need to do to keep your family together. And fortunately, the parents that engaged me, they were already invested, and they said, "Yep, okay, we're listening to you. We'll take your advice here." And now we really did solve everyone's issues. We created certainty for everyone. We created a plan. Dad was one of the never going to take his boots off people, and didn't want to talk about handing over to the next generation. But eventually, we got to a plan where everything was okay. Everyone had a time frame, and even though it was 8 years away before Dad finally agreed he was going to take off the boots and let the next generation come through, he decided that at the time. So he went from never having a handover date to an 8-year plan. And I'm just going to tell you, that made all the difference in the world to the bulk of the children. They didn't need it to be tomorrow. They just needed to know that there was a time frame and that there was a plan. And that created all the help in the world. And we now have a family, and they're still clients of ours, and they're still happy. They still all get on, and it's always a pleasure to catch up with them. So I just want to touch on briefly, and look, now's probably a good time. Anybody has any questions, please put the questions in the chat now, and happy to take a couple of questions as we're moving ahead here now. So Tori, if you just want to flash up any particular questions, any particular questions, or we'll just keep moving on with the 3 options. Okay, well, I'll come back to questions. You're probably furiously writing them down and haven't finished writing them yet, so I'll give you a minute. But what I'd like to say is that basically we like to give everyone 3 options. And hi, Susie. Hi from New Zealand. Great to have you here. We like to give people 3 options, and the first one is, and everyone can do this themselves. Lainey, yep, I might speak to you separately if I can about that, Lainey. Thanks, contesting the will, but I'll certainly say, just leave it up there for a sec, Tori. Lainey, I will say that our whole process is designed to have conversations with each of the family members to minimise the risk of wills being contested. But if you ever get to the point where, and you're in Australia, Lainey, are you not New Zealand? If you get to the point where we can't help in regard to having conversations and creating a plan that's going to keep everybody happy, and there's still one person who's agitated and so on, then there are ways that lawyers can, Queensland, yet there are ways that lawyers can help you here in regard to fixing that. I'm not going to go into it on the webinar here, but it takes a bit of work, but it can be done. Excuse me. So just looking at the, but thanks for the question, Lainey. Just looking at the options here, you can do nothing, pay nothing, cross your fingers, and hope that nothing happens, and you'll probably get the same outcome as the second option that you've got, which is to do it yourself. You can do it with your local solicitor, your local. I mean, we'll always use your accountant because they'll provide us with information that we need. But I'm probably here to tell you that less than 3% of lawyers in Australia really know how to do this properly. And I can say that I'm not a lawyer. We only work with lawyers who are good at this. And I think if there's anyone on, who's met some of the lawyers that we do use. I'm sure they'll come back and tell you we've chosen some great lawyers who know what they're talking about. So the second option is to do it yourself. Use your local guy, do a news agency will. I'm just going to tell you now, it's not going to work. And I mean, you'll have something in place which may pacify your kids. But when they see the final product and when you pass on, there'll be a son-in-law, daughter-in-law who's going to contest the will, nothing surer. And I'll tell you now, it's probably $250,000 and upward is how much it's going to cost you in legal fees if someone contests a will. Okay, and the other thing is, if you do it yourself, there's no one keeping you on task, and there's no time frame. So, you know, we just cross our fingers in this one as well and hope that you get it done before you pass on. Third option is we step in. Can take longer depending on the legal complexities and so on, but we now have a process where we'll be done in 90 days. I mean, you engage us for a year, but to start with, we can have all this done in 90 days, fully documented, and a fully documented foundation for your family, for their estate and their succession plan. And I'll just show you here, this is what we've upgraded our process this year. And once again, I'll make the screen as big as I can. I appreciate that if you're on an iPhone, you won't be able to read this. An iPad maybe. But if you want this, we can send this to you as well. But we basically have three options. So within the three options, if you work with someone like us, we have an online version. We have the standard version, which is a bit of a hybrid. So, you know, people who live miles and miles away who are happy to have most of the meetings by Zoom. We have a standard version, and we have the executive version where everyone is, every meeting we have is face to face, and you know, I'll fly out and we'll come out and see people. Helen, yep, thanks. One property, two children. Yep. How do we retire? Good question, and certainly happy to. There's a myriad of answers to that, but yeah, happy to have a one of the things that we provide is a free 30-minute chat. You might like to put up that website. Thanks, Tori. Book.markwestcott.com, and that'd be something I'd be happy to take offline and talk with you about in regard to your own particular circumstances. There's the web link there. Okay, so that's where we've decided to go this year in regard to our offer, and obviously there's differing investment levels for the online, the standard, and the executive, and what we've actually also done, and we'll be releasing at our workshop, which is coming up soon, is our Rural Succession Solution Forum. And hi, Kathy. So we're putting together a forum. People who are our existing clients will be invited to the forum anyway, but we're putting on a 2-day forum to get that done even quicker than the 90 days. So more about that coming up. So I said at the end of this, I'd have an offer for you to help support Angel Flight and to book for a Succession Labs workshop, which will allow you to go even deeper in regard to even some of the things that we've spoken about today. There's the trusty steed, and so we want to support Angel Flight. So basically what I'm offering here is the opportunity for you to join us for a 2-hour Succession Labs workshop. There'll be a more in-depth workbook and so on. We'll have other guest speakers, Peter McNulty, who's a specialist in transition planning. So those people that are looking at moving from, the generational change, and you're wondering what you're going to do if you get off the farm, Peter is coming along. He'll be presenting as well. It's 4:00 Queensland time, Tuesday the 21st. Now we're throwing in 2 bonus gifts just because we can, and all we're asking is that you make a donation of $49 to Angel Flight. We don't keep any of that. 100% of that will go to Angel Flight. There's a website there, lab.ruralsuccessionretreat.com, and I'm suspecting, Tori, that there'll be an email going out to everyone to be able to register for that. We're giving away these are 2 online courses. We're giving away the the Family Estate Blueprint. That's worth $1,500. We're giving away the Legacy Letters, our online course for that, where you can do all your own legacy letters and so on, $750. So it's about $2,500 worth of value. All we're asking you to do is invest $49 with Angel Flight, and we'd love to see you in a couple of weeks' time. This is something, please feel free to send that link off to other people you might know who would benefit from a 2-hour workshop. As I say, we'll be going much deeper. We'll be giving away some more of the tools and capabilities inside that workshop, and opening up and giving you the opportunity to ask questions before the workshop that we're very happy to answer. So in the fullness of time, we can't answer your questions one-on-one today, but certainly the opportunity is there for you to take the free 30-minute chat. And Lainey, I think if you want to book that, book.markwestcott.com, and then book to come along to this Succession Labs workshop. And the workshop, yes, is online. At the workshop, we'll be going into more depth too about what we'll be doing at the 2-day retreat. Tori, you might want to put up the dates for the 2-day retreat as well. And the Succession Labs workshop will go into detail of the retreat and give you the opportunity to book in there. If you're existing clients, you may just have entry immediately to that retreat. And depending on where you are with us, there'll be a financial contribution to come along to that retreat. So I think it's at the end of 25th, 26th of March. It's a weekend at the end of March. And so we look forward to seeing you there. But more importantly, please go online now, immediately while you're here and it's hot in your mind, lab.ruralsuccessionretreat.com. Pay the $49, invest or donate the $49 to Angel Flight, and Sue Ellen and Tori will send you off links to your $22.50 worth of bonus gifts. So 25th to 26th of March at Sanctuary Cove in Queensland. Thanks, Sue Ellen. So any final questions, any comments, please? I'd really appreciate any comments you've got. I hope this has been valuable, insightful for you, and you've picked up something for investing this hour. And look forward to any comments you'd like to make in regard to the presentation today. And I look forward to seeing you in a week and a bit's time at the Succession Labs workshop. Thanks everyone for coming along, and look forward to seeing you soon. I'm Mark Westcott.